When my mom died, I thought the hardest part would be losing her. I was wrong. The hardest part was watching my stepfather turn into someone I didn't recognize, someone I couldn't believe she had trusted. Someone who didn't grieve, didn't break down, didn't even flinch. Instead, he started planning. And I was the obstacle in the way of that plan. Let me rewind. My name is Daniel. I was 26 when my mother passed away after a long fight with cancer. We'd always been close. It had been just the two of us for years before she met Victor, my stepfather. She married him when I was 15. I never hated him, but I never trusted him either. There was something in his smile that never quite reached his eyes. Victor was charming in the way con men are charming. Polished. Always saying the right thing. Always acting like the perfect husband in public. But behind closed doors, he was cold. Quietly controlling. Never outright abusive, just calculated. My mom didn't see it. Or maybe she did, but she was tired of being alone. By the time she got sick, Victor had taken over most of the finances. To take the pressure off her, he said. She let him. She wanted peace. She wanted someone to handle things. When she was in hospice, we had a talk, just the two of us. She told me she had updated her will. That she wanted to make sure I'd be okay. That she had left everything to me, our house, her savings, the family land her parents had passed down. She said, Victor has his own money. You're my son. This is for you. I didn't think much about it at the time. I didn't want to. She died 2 weeks later. The funeral was small, quiet, painful. Victor barely said a word. Didn't cry. Didn't even look like he'd lost his wife. He just looked annoyed, like it was all an inconvenience. 2 days after the funeral, I went to the lawyer's office to review the will. That's when it started. The lawyer looked confused when I mentioned what Mom had told me. He pulled out a document and said, "This is the most recent will on file. It leaves everything to Victor." I felt like someone punched me in the chest. I asked when it was signed. 2 days before she died. I knew immediately something was wrong. She couldn't even speak that day. I was with her. She had slipped in and out of consciousness. She couldn't hold a pen, let alone sign a legal document. And yet, there it was. A signature. Witnessed. Notarized. And suddenly, everything that was mine, everything she had promised, was legally his. Victor showed up at the house later that day. He acted like nothing was wrong. Said, "Tough week, huh?" and helped himself to a drink. I asked him about the will. He smirked. Your mom changed her mind at the end. She wanted me to have peace of mind. I asked how she signed it. He said, she found the strength. He said it like he was proud of himself. I knew he forged it. Or coerced it. Or both. But proving that? That would be another story. I could have gone to court. But he was smart. The document was clean. Notarized by someone I'd never met. Witnessed by 2 people who weren't part of our family. He'd planned it. So I did something I never thought I would. I pretended to walk away. I told him I didn't want to fight. That I understood. That I just wanted to grieve. I left the house my mother raised me in, and moved in with a friend across town. He believed me. That was his first mistake. Because while he was busy enjoying his stolen inheritance, I was preparing for war. Not the kind fought in courtrooms. The kind fought in shadows. The kind that leaves no fingerprints. I started by learning everything I could about Victor. Not just who he was with my mom, but who he was before her. His past. His finances. His patterns. I needed leverage, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people like Victor always leave a trail. He had been married twice before. Both ended in strange circumstances, no accusations, no drama, but each time he walked away with assets that didn't belong to him. One ex-wife lost her house. Another sold a family business weeks after their divorce. I tracked both of them down. The first didn't want to talk. Said she had moved on. The second? She was more than willing. Her name was Cynthia. She met Victor when she was 28. He swept her off her feet, got her to sign over half her business to him for tax purposes, then slowly isolated her from her family and friends. When she finally filed for divorce, he walked away with her property and emptied their joint account the day before she filed. Same playbook. She said something I never forgot. Victor doesn't fight you. He lets you hand things over. And by the time you realize what you've done, it's too late. That told me everything I needed to know. He was methodical. He never took anything by force. He made you think it was your idea. Until it wasn't. That's when I stopped thinking like a victim. And started thinking like him. I went back to the house one afternoon when I knew he wouldn't be there. Used the spare key I still had. It felt like trespassing, even though it was my home not long ago. I didn't touch anything. I just looked. In the office, I found a locked drawer. Picked it open with a hairpin. Inside were documents, bank records, property titles, investment portfolios. He had moved nearly all of my mother's assets into his name within days of her death. The man hadn't wasted a second. But that wasn't the worst part. In one folder, I found a letter. It was signed by my mother, handwritten, dated only a week before she passed. In it, she said she wanted everything to go to me. No mention of Victor. It wasn't a legal will, but it was her real voice. I photographed everything. Then I closed the drawer, locked it again, and left. Now I had something personal, something real, but I needed more. Victor had a weakness, and I knew exactly how to use it. He was greedy. He liked to brag, to show off. And most of all, he liked to feel smarter than everyone around him. So I gave him an audience. I reached out to one of his colleagues, someone he used to do real estate deals with. I pretended to be looking for investment advice. Said I'd heard Victor was brilliant. Played dumb. Flattered him. The colleague laughed and said, "Victor's smart, sure. But he's also slippery. You gotta watch him." Then he said something that caught my attention. Back in the day, he had a trick used to create shell companies, move property through them to hide assets. Almost got caught once. That was it. That was the angle. I spent the next week tracing every LLC tied to Victor's name. Buried in public records, I found two that were inactive, one created just months before my mother's death, listed to a P.O. box, but connected to the family land. The one she told me would be mine. He'd transferred it illegally, without probate, without consent, through this shell company, and he had signed her name. Forgery. Now I had him. But I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. First, I needed to make him sweat. Break his confidence. Let him know that he wasn't as untouchable as he thought. So I started leaving little signs. Nothing obvious. Just enough to rattle him. A photo slipped under his door of the letter my mother wrote, dated and clear. An anonymous voicemail, "You moved fast after she died." Too fast. A copy of the land transfer paperwork in his mailbox, with a sticky note that read, "Nice signature. Did she teach you that?" I stayed invisible. No contact. No threats. Just whispers in the dark. And Victor? He started to crack. Victor became paranoid almost overnight. I heard from a neighbor that he'd installed new cameras around the house, top of the line once. He started locking every door, every drawer. Hired a security consultant. Even changed the locks, probably thinking I was the one creeping around. And he was right. But the best part? He didn't know how much I actually knew. And that kind of uncertainty is poison to someone like him. He couldn't fight back because he didn't know what he was fighting. Then he made a mistake. He tried to get ahead of whatever he thought was coming. He went back to the lawyer and requested a legal update of the estate documentation, probably thinking if he refreshed the records, any old irregularities would get buried. What he didn't know was that I had already emailed that same lawyer the photos of the forged signature on the land transfer, along with the letter my mom wrote. I didn't say it was me, just an anonymous tip, but it was enough to raise red flags. 2 days later, the lawyer requested an internal audit of the estate. That meant going over every document Victor had submitted, every transfer, every signature, every asset. Victor didn't panic immediately, but he started making moves. He called me. I didn't answer. Then he texted, "Hey, can we talk? I think there's been some confusion. We should clear the air." I waited a day, then replied, "There's no confusion, just consequences." He didn't respond after that, but I knew I'd gotten into his head. I still had more to do. I contacted a forensic handwriting expert privately through a friend of a friend. I sent them samples of my mom's writing and a copy of the suspicious land deed signature. A week later, I got the report. There was a high probability the signature was forged, not just clumsy, intentional. That was the final piece. Now I could go nuclear if I wanted to, but I wasn't done yet. I wanted Victor to feel what it's like to be played. I set up a meeting. Through a lawyer friend, I requested that Victor attend a mediation, pretending it was just a small dispute about misunderstood language in the will. He agreed, probably thinking he could charm his way through it. He showed up looking confident, smug even. Same crisp suit. Same fake smile. I let him talk first. He explained how my mother had come to her senses near the end. How she was worried I wouldn't handle the pressure of managing property and money. How she asked him to take care of things. I didn't interrupt. I just watched him lie. Then I placed the photos of the forged documents on the table. The land transfer. The fake LLC. The handwriting analysis. And finally, the letter my mom wrote to me in her own words. His face drained of color. For once, he had no script, no spin, just silence. Then I said, calmly, you took everything from her in the end. But you're not taking this. He tried to recover, mumbled something about misunderstandings, claimed he had help filling out the paperwork, said maybe someone else had mishandled the filing. I let him talk. Then my lawyer slid a final envelope across the table. Inside were the official complaints we were ready to file, one to the state bar, another to the district attorney, and a third to the IRS regarding tax fraud through asset concealment. Victor didn't say a word, because he knew. He was done. After that meeting, Victor tried to play it cool. For about 3 days. Then he started calling me nonstop. Blocked numbers, unknown IDs, emails from burner accounts. The man who had once acted like I didn't exist was now desperate to get my attention. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. He even tried contacting my aunt, my mom's sister, who despised him. Said he wanted to make things right and resolve things like family. She laughed and hung up on him. I had no interest in resolution. Not with him. What I wanted was for him to lose everything he tried to steal, and that was already in motion. Within a week of our mediation, the lawyer filed a formal challenge to the will on the basis of coercion and forgery. We had the handwriting analysis, the timing of the signature, the notarization inconsistencies, and my mother's personal letter. That combination was damning. It triggered a full probate investigation. All of Victor's financial transfers were frozen. He was notified that the deed transfer of the family land was being reviewed for fraud. The property titles were locked from any further changes or sales. And that shell company he used to hide the land? We traced it back to him and submitted it to the IRS with documentation on potential tax evasion. Victor was under fire from every angle, and I hadn't lifted a finger in public. No drama, no interviews, no social media smear campaigns. Just quiet, strategic destruction. A month later, I got a formal call from the estate attorney. They had ruled the final days of my mother's life as a period of diminished capacity. The will that Victor submitted, signed 2 days before her death, was legally dismissed. The previous version of the will, dated months earlier and naming me as sole beneficiary, was reinstated. I was officially back in possession of everything: the house, the savings, the land. Victor? He was given a 30-day notice to vacate. He tried to fight it, but the evidence was too clear. He tried to claim tenant rights until it was proven he had transferred property to himself illegally. He tried to sell assets, but everything was already frozen. He even had the audacity to offer me a deal. A compromise. He said, let me keep the land and we can walk away clean. I told him the truth. This was never about the land. It was about watching you lose what you tried to take. And then I hung up, because for once, he had nothing left to bargain with. Victor moved out on the 28th day. Not a word. No tantrum. No apology. Just a quiet, bitter retreat with whatever dignity he had left, and even that was paper thin. The house felt different the moment he was gone. I walked through the rooms like I was meeting them for the first time again. It wasn't just about furniture or photographs. It was about the silence. The kind of silence that finally feels safe. I stood in my mother's old bedroom for a long time. It still smelled like her lotion. Her favorite scarf was folded on the chair by the window. I sat down and reread the letter she left me. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs. But in it, she told me how proud she was of the man I had become, that she trusted me with her legacy, that she knew I would protect what mattered. And I had, not just the land or the money, but the truth, the part of her that lived in me. I didn't want revenge anymore. I already had it. And not just because Victor lost, it's because I didn't become like him. He used manipulation, deception, and control. I used patience, strategy, and clarity. He played games in the dark. I brought everything into the light. It wasn't long before word spread in the community. People who used to admire Victor's charm began to whisper about how he lost it all. Some of his old business contacts distanced themselves. One of his former partners reached out to me and said, "You handled that like a surgeon. Quiet, clean, precise." That meant more to me than I expected, because I had learned something in all of this. The sweetest revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about making sure they can never touch you again. It's about reclaiming your name, your story, your power, and doing it with so much self-control that it makes them question everything. Victor's world collapsed because of his own actions. All I did was make sure he couldn't hide the damage anymore. I eventually sold the house, not because I wanted to leave, but because it felt like I had completed something. I took the proceeds, invested part of it, and used the rest to restore the land my mother loved so much. Build a small cabin there. Planted trees. Let it become something new. Now, when I walk that land, I don't think about what he did. I think about how I didn't let it define me. How I didn't need rage to win. I just needed to outlast the lie with the truth. And I did.